So, Stuart Hill, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
It's an absolute delight, Loz. Thank you for having me.
Great. And we go back quite a long way. We've been chatting, at least online, God, for at least 10 years, I think it goes back as far as that. We've met before. And for me, what's really interesting about what you're doing is you're challenging the fundamental claim that we're all trying to seek the answers to, is who owns England, who owns the land. And I know that you've been doing tremendous work in Shetland and Forvik in trying to expose the land ownership scam, if we want to call it that, in England, Scotland, the Shetland Islands. And you've been making amazing progress and, exposing how wafer thin all these claims really are. So, Stuart, who owns England?
Well, I'll take that one stage further. It's not just all the things you mentioned, but who owns us as well. Now, who owns England? The Queen, the Crown, is deemed to own the Allodial title. Now, that's a term which has no real use or meaning in our everyday life.
Allodial title.
Allodial title.
Yeah, it's a very arcane word that's hardly ever heard or used.
Yes. And the reason for that is that the Queen is deemed to own the Allodial title. Allodial simply means absolute. So allodial ownership is absolute ownership.
Nobody else makes a claim over it.
The same way as I own my shirt. That's that kind of ownership. Nobody can lay a claim to my shirt or my watch because it's absolute ownership. And the Queen is deemed to own the Allodial title of the whole of the realm.
Where does that claim come from? Why does the Queen claim Allodial title?
Well, it all came from William the Conqueror.
Yeah.
He came and imposed what's called feudal law, and the remnants of that still exist, particularly in terms of land use. So what happens under feudal law is that the monarch owns everything and everybody owns under the monarch. Mm-hmm. So you never actually own your piece of land. You're like a tenant, as it were. In fact, freehold, the term freehold is actually freehold tenure. Mm. So it's a tenancy.
Well, from my own, explorations into landlord is really, it's one of the few areas of law that still uses the old language. They keep all the old language in there because they want to keep it, hidden and secret. And what I discovered is that the highest title I can own for land, even if I own the property without a mortgage, owned it outright, is fee simple absolute.
Yeah.
And fee simple absolute came as a result, I believe, because of pressure upon the king about people saying, well, come on, we need some land ownership here.
Yeah.
And that was his concession. And even though it's quite a lot of bundle of rights, the Crown still retains 4 main rights over the land with the fee simple absolute, which is like a timeshare. But if one of those rights is compulsory purchase, then you don't own the land, do you? If someone can kick you off it, then you're not the owner. You're merely a form of a tenant.
Yeah, I think it was Lord or Judge Gibson in a case in Australia said that no subject under the Crown can own land because if he did, he would be sovereign.
So, okay, that's an interesting that's an interesting position. So what you're saying there is that to be sovereign means that you hold the allodial title of whatever property is that we're determining.
Yeah, I only discovered this recently when I was writing my book, Stolen Isles. I was actually writing about allodial title, although I didn't realize it.
Okay.
And in Shetland, it's much closer to the surface than it is in England. We'll come to that later. But in Scots law, and by implication in UK law, sovereignty is actually defined as ownership of the allodial title. It says in the law books, they are one and the same thing. Mm. So if that applies in Scotland, it must apply in England. I've not been able to find it in any English law books, but
Well, like you say, it's a subject not discussed, because unless you're the sovereign, who's going to be discussing it?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
But in Shetland, it's never been contested that the allodial title, which came down from Norse law, in the old Norse law, everybody owned their land absolutely, allodially. And that was brought over, and it's never been taken away from the people of Shetland.
So let's move a little bit over to Shetland, because that's where you live now, and you've been there for quite some time, and you've been causing absolute mayhem up in the little small islands quietly in Shetland. So tell us about how you arrived in Shetland, why that's your current home, and what it is you've been doing in Shetland the last 10, 15 years, is it?
Yeah, well, I was attempting to sail around Great Britain solo non-stop in a 14-foot open boat. I started off from East Anglia, and by the time I got up round the top of Shetland, I was absolutely drenched. I had, all my dry clothes had gone. There was a storm coming up, and I thought, well, I'll just sit it out overnight.
You were shipwrecked on Shetland.
I was shipwrecked. I was 50 miles off the coast, and I had to call the helicopter. People coming into Shetland are called soothmouthers. That's not to do with the way they speak. It's to do with the fact that they came in the south mouth of the harbour.
Okay.
I came in from the west, so nobody called me a soothmouther. This was at a stage when I'd decided years ago I was going to live to 117. And this was almost to the day when I was 57 and a half, halfway. I had a completely blank sheet, no ties or responsibilities. And whereas people were thinking, how unfortunate you are to be brought here with nothing, I had just the clothes I stood up in. I'm thinking, well, I've got a blank sheet. How many people ever have that opportunity in their lives to think, that's what I did with the first half, now I can design the second half?
So you were landed shipwrecked on Shetland and made that your home?
Yeah.
And you've been there since?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Lucky to find a Shetland partner, and well, she's Shetland born and bred. And she's given me a great insight into how that society works. Most people moving to Shetland coming from England.
Outsiders.
Yeah. They're living in Shetland scenery, but they're living an English life.
Okay.
Shetland.
Tell me a little bit about the network amongst people, Shetlanders, natives, because you were telling me, interesting, that when people meet, the first thing that they have to try and sort out is the relationship.
Yeah. It's like one big family. There's 23,000 people there. But if two Shetlanders meet and they don't already know each other, they have to sort out the relationship. Doesn't matter whether that's a blood relationship or people they know, they have to find out their position in relation to each other before they can even start a conversation. Now that's what I call the Shetland conversation. It doesn't exist in England because we haven't got those close ties.
But we used to have, didn't we?
We did, yes.
Before, the Industrial Revolution, when everyone could travel wherever they wanted to, people were rooted in one spot.
Exactly.
Therefore, we were all very tight knit.
Yeah.
So it feels like it's almost a time capsule going to Shetland.
Yeah, and it's in everything. It's in the language.
Yeah.
It's in all those tight relationships. It's everywhere, and you can't escape from it. But if you don't know it's there, you will never see it.
So you find that being an outsider, where you're not connected to those internal relationships and the dynamics between Shetlanders, how is that giving you an advantage?
Well, I don't have to keep looking over my shoulder to think, what's my father going to say? What's my uncle going to say? My mother? All of those things. Every Shetlander has to do that before they will make a step. Which means that although I've got a lot of support in the community, people stop me in the street and shake my hand and say, good on you, Stuart, keep going. Nobody wants to put their head above the parapet. But at the same time, because this is such a close-knit community, once they see me being successful, that community will move as one.
Okay, so tell me about why Shetland is such a unique space and place in order for you to make land claims, and how did you even discover this about Shetland in the first place?
Well, shortly after I arrived, there was a notice, a pamphlet came in the local paper about Udal law. Udal is the same as Allodial.
Udal law.
Udal law, it's the Old Norse law.
Oh.
And I got interested and tried to find out about it. I tried to find the author of the pamphlet, but couldn't find him. But gradually, I got together a group of people who were interested in this, and it was the fact that it's still alive and that the Old Norse law has never been taken away. It's just been kind of superseded and pushed out of the way by Scots law as Scots came in. And various groups came together, coalesced, and then dispersed. And I just carried on and collecting documents, and people started to send me documents. And what I was finding was that in going right back to 1469, Shetland was pawned by the Danish king to the King of Scotland.
So it was once the property of Scandinavian
used
Denmark.
it used to belong to Norway.
Norway.
It was part of Norway.
Yeah.
But whereas the Hebrides and the Isle of Man were ceded to Scotland.
What do you mean ceded?
It was an official, proper
transfer of land.
Exactly, yeah. In Shetland's case, King Christian decided to pawn his lands. He was wanting to marry his daughter to King James III, and there was a big dowry involved. He had to come up with a lot of money. He couldn't come up with the money, so he pawned Shetland for 8,000 florins.
But he retained the title.
But I must correct myself. He pawned his lands in Shetland.
Okay.
For this 8,000 florins.
So he didn't own all of Shetland. He only owned a portion of Shetland.
Now, what the historians like to ignore is the fact that he only had the 10%. He could only pawn his 10%. You can't pawn somebody else's lands. Mm-hmm. And the other 90% belonged to the lords of Norway. Now, they were sovereign in the most complete sense. They owned the land outright. They had their own parliament. They elected their king. They made their own laws. So you can't get any more sovereign than that. Well, and those rights came with the land.
Well, that's really interesting that you say that, because in England, previous to William the Conqueror coming and changing the country completely, we had a similar system to what you've just described, in which all of the land was owned by the people who lived on it. You know, we weren't tenants, we were the owners of the land, we held it in Allodial. And we had an elected king through the Witan. King Harold, for instance, was I believe the last elected English king. And it was only when William came that system was wiped clear by the new conquerors. But it seems as if...
But he took it by conquest.
He took it by conquest. But it seems as if Shetland is a legacy, and which that old system kind of still remains.
Yes, because the crown has never been able... the rights of those lords of Norway have been passed down to every single landowner, with some exceptions, in Shetland. So everybody who owns a house or a piece of land is sovereign in their own right.
Wow.
Try and tell them that in the street, and they'll just look at you as if you're completely bonkers.
Yeah.
But the exceptions to that are the lairds, who came over as dignitaries, waving a piece of paper from the king, saying, well, I've got a charter from the king to take the rents in Shetland. And they built up these large estates. But that piece of paper had no value to it. The king didn't have anything to give.
It was just a claim.
Yeah. But it wasn't even a claim. Well, I suppose it was a claim. Yes,
they were saying, it's mine, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly, yeah. So the crown has never been able to take it back from the people. To do so would reveal the scam.
Yeah.
So it's just all been done by presumption and the gradual imposition of Scots law.
Because in England, it's difficult to find out who actually owns the land. I mean, there's books written, as with who owns England. There's one here. And when I was, trying to find out those answers to those questions myself, the only place that I could get an answer to that was the land registry, who, told me that the crown owns all land in England and Wales under allodial title. Yeah. But that claim doesn't extend to Shetland, does it?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
And I don't think it even extends to England.
Okay, well, we come to that in a minute.
All right.
Let's because that's really interesting in
Yeah.
itself. Let's stay focused on Shetland because I think that's the key to your discovery, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me more about, you found out that Shetland potentially or is a sovereign nation in itself.
Yeah.
And where did that lead you?
Well, somebody gave me an island. It's a small island on the west coast of Shetland. It's part of Shetland. It's about a hectare. I've got a house on it. I built a house without planning permission. What I was trying to do was
What's it called?
Forwick.
Okay, so this is the t-shirt.
This is
here,
a
isn't it?
t-shirt. Yeah.
That's Forwick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a rock in Shetland.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a hectare. I built a house on it. What I wanted to do was to show people that whatever I can do on Forwick could be done anywhere in Shetland.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Shetland in microcosm.
So you claimed Forwick as your own and you're the sovereign.
Well, first of all, I wrote to the Queen and said, I'm offering my services as steward, which is the like a governor, if you like, of Forwick. She made no reply. So then I declared it as an independent state.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the independent state, a sovereign state of Forwick.
Of Forwick. And you're able to make that claim because nobody else has a higher claim than
Exactly.
you.
I've got the Allodial title.
You've got the Allodial title,
Yeah.
and the Queen didn't challenge it. The Crown didn't challenge it.
No.
Therefore,
They were offered the opportunity to dispute my claim, but they didn't. So it's mine.
okay.
And that's been since 2008.
So you're not the first person, not the only person to do something like this. There's an old oil platform, isn't it? In
Sealand.
Sealand.
Yeah.
And they've done something similar. Is that correct? Where
Yeah.
they've just claimed the oil platform as a sovereign nation.
Yeah. I think they're more interested in the commercial potential.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the political
Of course.
stuff that's going on. And, I could see something that's just basically fundamentally wrong and needs to be corrected.
So with Forwick, you are the allodial title owner of that island.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what have you been able to do as the allodial title holder of the island?
Well, what I wanted to do was challenge or find out how the UK and Scotland think that they have authority in Shetland.
Was this to show Shetland as well as like a
Yeah.
vehicle to show an example of the sovereignty that you could attain?
Because whatever I do on Forwick is equally applicable in Shetland as a whole.
Mhm.
So the Crown exerts its authority through the courts and the police. So that's where I had to go to challenge that authority.
Did they challenge you? Did they, do anything?
No.
claim over Forwick?
They know very well that I'm right.
Yeah.
They don't want me in their courts.
Yeah.
So
But you've been
and
dragged in there a few times, haven't you?
once or twice. I can't take a case to their court because I don't recognise it. They have no authority, as far as I'm concerned, in Shetland. So I have to provoke them enough to take me to court, which is remarkably difficult. I put up a house without planning permission. I made absolutely sure that everybody knew about it. There was a council tax claim raised on the property. And I thought, right, here comes the court case. In Forwick, yes.
Okay. So so you built a house.
Yeah.
And after building a house, the council or the authorities
Decided they want
could
council
you.
tax, yeah.
Yeah. So then you were the council tax bill.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What a
So
scam.
I took the attitude, well, I'm happy to pay the bill as long as you can show me how this is part of Scotland.
Yeah. It played into your hands, really, didn't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once I made that clear, they withdrew their claim. So I'm really not getting very far.
Yeah.
So I put an old Land Rover on the road with Forwick tax disc, Forwick number plate.
In Shetland or Forwick?
In Shetland.
In Shetland, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I'm coming onto the mainland.
Okay.
With
your Forwick registered vehicle.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Well, it was absolutely decrepit. no MOT. So all I could do with it was park it on the side of the road.
So it's just a test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It got vandalized. Somebody didn't understand what I was trying to do and just thought I was being bullshit. So it got vandalized, and the police came and phoned me up and said, we want you to remove this vehicle. I said, I'm happy for it to stay there. It's just parked on the side of the road. So they said, well, we're going to take it away. And we'll do it in 3/4 of an hour's time. So I went across. It's 3/4 of an hour drive from me. And supervised the loading onto or watched it being loaded onto their vehicle. The policeman said to me, do you want to make a complaint about this vandalism? I said, no, somebody just doesn't understand. So he said, well, would you make a statement to that effect? So just cover my back. I'm happy to do that. So we got in my car. He wrote out his statement. I signed it. And I said, do you mind writing signing a statement for me that you've read the sign in the back window, which says, I don't agree to this being towed, and anyone who does is liable to pay me £1,000 plus expenses. He could read it. He said, no, I'll do that. So he signed. I wrote it out. He signed it, put his number on. So now I've got a contract with Northern Constabulary, as it was then. I didn't pursue it, but it was just a nice little detail. But they took it away. They destroyed it. That's my property. They've taken and destroyed it.
Yep.
No charges. Anybody else doing something like that as a normal motorist would be in the court the next day. So I was a bit nonplussed about this. I still haven't got my court case. About 18 months later, I was offered 2 Mercedes vans. So I decked them out as consular vehicles.
So explain that to the audience. Consular vehicle is a diplomatic vehicle, isn't it?
Diplomatic vehicle, yes.
So Fulwick had commissioned these 2 vehicles as diplomatic vehicles that be driven in Shetland.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I drove the first one around for about 6 weeks before they stopped me for only having one brake light.
Did you put diplomatic plates on the car?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Fulwick number plate, Fulwick tax disc. So, and of course they had no MOT, but they were insured. So the police stopped me. They walked around the vehicle and decided it was unroadworthy, came to pick it up. They took that one and destroyed it. No charges.
No charges against you.
Against me.
Yeah.
Any other motorist driving that vehicle, being stopped, would have been in court the next day.
They didn't want you in court.
They did not.
To try and get rid of you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So I set up the other one, Fulwick consular vehicle number 2. I was written on the side of it. Same stuff, number plate, all that stuff. And this time, when they stopped me, I locked myself in. So they had to break in and drag me out.
Under what was the crime? So anyway, go on.
Yeah.
So they broke into your car.
Broke in. And dragged me out.
Wow.
And they had to arrest me. So now I've got my court case. So I challenged the jurisdiction of the court. That was my sole objective. I had
So just explain that. You were challenging the jurisdiction of the court.
That is the authority of the court. Yes.
Yeah.
So I was challenging their authority to be acting in Shetland as a Scottish court.
Yeah. So what you're saying is Scottish law has no jurisdiction within Shetland Islands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precisely. And, it should be an easy enough job, if it exists, for them to say, here's the document, Mr. Hill, here's the date when it happened, now go away and stop being silly.
Yeah.
But nobody's been able to do that.
So you would explain your challenge. What did you do in court when you were in there? What was your...
Well, I knew quite a lot about the history by then. So I'd written out a 120-page document, 90-page document with 120 supporting documents. And I was setting myself up for a fall because anyone at any point could pick on any document and pull it to bits. As a historian, these are all historical documents which showed how it was impossible for the Allodial title to have become in the possession of the Crown. But the Crown produced a magazine article
That was their evidence.
That was the sole authority on which they based their argument. A magazine article. That's all they could do.
And what was it? What was the article?
It was called "When Did Orkney and Shetland Become Part of Scotland?" It was, and the subtitle was "A Contribution to the Debate." So it wasn't even, the author wasn't even trying to make any proof. It was just his contribution to what he recognised as a debate.
So Orkney and Shetland is actually claimed to be owned by Scotland, not England or the United Kingdom.
Well, yes, it's a kind of step process.
Yeah.
They're part of Scotland, allegedly, and Scotland is part of the UK. Yeah. They had no option but to do anything else except find me guilty. If they admitted that I was right, it's impossible for the sheriff, which is the judge at that lower court level, impossible for him to even think about admitting that I was right, because then
the whole house of cards comes.
The whole thing falls down.
He doesn't want to be on his watch, does he?
Exactly, yeah. So you're talking about not just Shetland, you're talking about North Sea oil, you're talking about the fisheries, the whole shooting match will come falling down. So
can't they just say, well, we're claiming it now?
No, because I've already done it.
Okay, so
I've made on, well, the sovereign nation of Shetland has made a claim.
So what's the sovereign nation of Shetland? How is that different than Forvik?
Well, Forvik, the population of Forvik is international. Anyone can join from anywhere in the world. £20 a month.
So
£20 a year, sorry.
A little bit like the sovereign Knights of Malta. They don't actually have any land as such.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a foreign population.
Yeah.
The sovereign nation of Shetland is only open to residents of Shetland because they're the people that have the allodial title.
And the sovereign nation of Shetland is your project. This is something that you created.
Yeah. So the sovereign nation of Shetland has made an allodial claim, the absolute claim, for the whole of Shetland and the surrounding seabed out to 200 miles, or to the median line between us and another state.
Mm.
And that's unrebutted by either the UK or the Scottish governments. And that's been in place since 2013.
What are the Shetlanders, what's their opinion on this? Do you have much support amongst the islanders, or are they waiting to see, what happens with your challenge?
Yeah, everybody, well, a large number of people recognise that I know what I'm talking about, that I'm right, and they knew about it, even though the details have been hidden.
Yeah.
But everybody's too scared to confront authority. Everybody wants to go along with the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a boat here, and I can rock it a little. So
yeah, you're going to shipwreck Shetland, aren't you? By the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So I guess what's the benefit for Shetlanders to claim their sovereignty? What's the benefit of holding the allodial title? Doesn't that come with a lot of responsibility that they're just delegating to the United Kingdom? And why would the Shetlander want to do that? Other than freedom?
Well, now you put your finger right on it. I mean, what other reason would you want?
But when man has been domesticated to the level that we have at the moment, the ideas of freedom seems like,
Yeah, I think
farmyard animal.
I think I have to look at it in more basic terms. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
And from a financial point of view, if you don't have to pay income tax, if you don't have to pay VAT, if you can get your fuel at 70% less than it's available at the moment, if you can buy your electricity at half of the rate that we were paying in January, which is a deal I've done with SSE, OO Energy, it has to be attractive to people. But even that, even making that offer, if they can't see it actually happening, nobody's going to want to put their head above the parapet, put their arm out and have it chopped off. When they see the way that I've been treated in the courts, that if I step out of line, I can be arrested, put in the police cells, and then brought back again. No mention of being made of that in the court record. It's just done as an intimidatory tactic, or they can put me in prison for contempt of court for absolutely no reason. When they see that happening, nobody is going to want to voluntarily put themselves in that position. So I have to be able to insulate myself from the system. And that's what I've been working on in the past year or so.
It's also, it goes to the fundamental heart of our existence, doesn't it? You know, this taxation that we face as tenants on the land, someone who just claims it because they conquered it. You know, and we're told that extortion is illegal, except if you're the government, which is what tax is, isn't it? You know, it's forcing you to pay for something that, you know, you've got no choice in. It's coercion. It's a crime, isn't it? You know, so we've been conditioned so deeply to just accepting that tax is, you know, what did Franklin say? There's two things that are certain in life: death and taxes.
Yes.
You know, I don't know whether that's true. You know, I think both of those things can be challenged, you know, but especially taxes, because I think fundamentally
and death as well.
And death as well, yeah. So people take these maxims as fact. I think we're here to challenge them. That's what we need to do today, Stu. But, you know, I think that's what you're showing in Shetland, because if you can make an allodial claim for Shetland, then that's the end of the taxation scam. That's the plantation, isn't it? The human farm, right, where they're bleeding us dry of our labour through this crazy, insane criminal taxation system.
But it doesn't matter how right I am.
It's proven
it's not even
enforcing it.
No, it's not even that. It's getting people to get behind it. Because without people behind it, I'm just a crazy guy with some crazy idea that nobody really understands, and nobody really wants to understand because we're actually quite comfortable. I need people to be uncomfortable before they start to think about.
So you're waiting for the crash.
Well, I'm waiting for people to be waiting for people to be desperate about how am I going to pay the mortgage? How am I going to pay the electricity? You know, and I've got answers for that. But it relies on people taking responsibility for their own lives.
That's the biggest problem we've got, isn't it? Is that we've been so domesticated.
We've been made to be dependent.
And we've transferred our sovereignty, our personal sovereignty, to, you know, these people who are just abusing us and abusing our lives. And the first step is taking our sovereignty back if they're not going to protect it. And I think that's what you're doing with Shetland, isn't it? Is that you're showing people, actually, you know, do you want to be free? No, we want to be free. No. But it just as an example, let's say, for instance, Shetland was able to declare itself a successful sovereign nation. Yeah. Is there other examples that we could, you know, look at? I mean, how is the Isle of Man run? Because they have their own currency, their own police, even though they look like ours. Their own form of governance, but is it a deal between the Crown and the Isle of Man? What's the setup?
I'm not actually sure of the details, but that was one of the territories that was ceded by Norway to Scotland, so that was a legitimate deal. But I forget the name of the family, they were a prominent family, and they were able to do a deal with the Scottish government, or the Scottish king, maybe, I don't know. No, it'd be the UK. That they were kind of semi-independent. It's called a crown dependency.
Crown dependency. I think what they're saying is that we'll provide the muscle if you're in trouble. We'll give you the defence. But you make sure that you give a little taste back to us through taxation. It can only be that.
But they still have their parliament, which is called the Ting. Which is the old remnants of the Norse law.
So like the Witan. Yeah, that's interesting. Because they've got their own currency as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
Well, they used to have. They still got it.
I think they do.
Because I thought it was a little segue. I watched an amazing documentary called The Second Empire. And the documentary maker exposes what's really going on in the city of London, and how when the military phase of the British Empire came to an end during the end of the Second World War, the Second Empire emerged, which was the financial empire, which they run through all of the offshore dependencies that they still have from the British Empire. So it's like the Isle of Man, Guernsey, you know, the Caribbean islands, and it seems these islands are given some level of autonomy as long as the City of London can stash the money there that they need
Yeah.
to do. And I think maybe Shetland has some benefit to the Crown currently. I mean,
Absolutely.
what do they get from that? Is this the oil?
Yeah.
Yeah.
20% of the oil revenues go to the British government.
Yeah.
And we, at the height of the production, I think we were talking about $50 million, £1 million a year. Could have been more. I forget the figures, but enormous sum. In relation to Shetland, but that was Shetland's money.
Mm.
It should have been the money that went to the Treasury should have been regarded as our foreign aid to the UK.
So I can't take advantage of the fantastic discoveries that you've made in Shetland because that's for Shetlanders, but I can take advantage of what you're doing in Forvik. And I know that you're issuing passports and driving licenses for members who join Forvik. Tell me about that and how not just me, our listeners who are watching, how can they take advantage of the amazing freedoms that you've discovered in Forvik?
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
We were talking about the Allodial title of England.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is still out there. I think we've not had a legitimate monarch under the feudal system since Charles I. He was beheaded, as we know, by the parliamentarians, Oliver Cromwell.
The only regicide in our history.
Exactly. And Cromwell took the sovereignty by conquest. He did exactly the same as
What the Romans did.
Yeah. William the Conqueror. So he took it on behalf of the Commonwealth. Now, I understand that.
So let's get clear on that. Is that sovereignty resided with the conquering monarchs?
Yes.
From the Normans up to Charles I?
Yeah.
Cromwell
took
sovereignty.
The sovereignty.
And then placed it within the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's clear that Cromwell was working on behalf of the population, not simply a close clique of parliamentarians. He was out to change the whole system. And in fact, there was a whole lot of legislation that went on during what is referred to as the interregnum, the period between crowns.
Okay.
Which is
the Glorious Revolution, which came at the end of Cromwell.
No, before that.
Okay.
Because Charles II came onto the throne
after
the interregnum.
Okay.
That's completely airbrushed out of the history as it's recognised by the Crown. Charles II legislation comes in the 15th, I think it's the 15th year of his reign, whereas in fact that's the period when the parliamentarians were in charge, and they passed a whole lot of really interesting legislation. Now, if that sovereignty, the allodial title, it's the same thing.
Which sovereignty is equates to holding a allodial title.
They are
identical
concepts.
Yeah.
According to the Scottish law books.
Yeah.
And if that's the case in Scotland, that must be for the whole of the UK. So that sovereignty had gone to the people. The allodial title had gone to the people. I think it's still there.
Why do you think it's still there? Because there's nothing to say otherwise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They've just made a presumption that I'm king, I have the allodial title.
But the thing is that after Cromwell's period and the reorganisation of Britain, then came the Glorious Revolution, didn't it? Which was
it's irrelevant.
Of course, but that's when they established the constitutional monarchy.
Yeah.
And it's claimed now that sovereignty resides in Parliament.
Yeah, but all of that is based on the presumption of the ownership of the allodial title.
Yeah.
Which they don't have. It's out. It's out here with the people. Now, this is where it gets interesting, where what I've done in Shetland can apply to the whole of the UK.
Yeah.
Anybody with a piece of land can declare that piece of land an independent state.
So currently that land is registered at Land Registry
Yeah.
under the Crown's claim of Allodial, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So-
what would you be doing? Would you be removing that from the register?
The register becomes irrelevant because you make an allodial claim, which they cannot refute.
Yeah.
That is then yours. You can notify the registry if you want.
But it sounds crazy, but it's not. That's the old system, isn't it? That's
Exactly.
the original system
Yeah.
of how England
Yeah.
was run. Yeah.
So you claim the allodial title, you automatically have sovereignty over that piece of land. Now, you can then establish diplomatic relations with Forvik, or the sovereign nation of Shetland. Under the Vienna Convention, when you leave your embassy, which is the
Your land.
Forvik embassy in your land,
Mhm.
you leave that and go into what's called a third state under the Vienna Convention. That third state must protect you
Okay.
as a diplomat.
Okay. So this is really juicy, right? So
Yeah.
so what we're going into here is the right to self-determination.
Yeah.
Is that we all have the right to self-determination, that we don't have to be under any feudal lord or any tyrant, that we have the right to be free,
Yeah.
self-determining.
And that's declared under the Montevideo Convention.
Okay, and that's international law, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on the Montevideo Convention?
It's a long time since I've looked at it. Well, it guarantees the right of any people
Mhm.
to declare their own self-determination.
Yeah.
So it doesn't depend on the number of people. It doesn't depend on recognition by anybody else. You can just do it.
Mhm.
Of course, very few people do it.
Well, that's what you've done with Forvik, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Because you have to be responsible then for your own security. You have to be responsible for everything concerning your land.
But you can enter into treaties with other parties in order to secure your defence, even the Crown, if you wish.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in Shetland's case, the amount of oil revenue they're getting would be more ample, far above anything we need for defence. So surely we can come to some arrangement with the UK for our defence.
But there's no way the UK are going to relinquish that oil field, is there?
Not voluntarily, no.
Yeah.
But they have very little to say once the whole of the population says, well, actually, we're independent, we're sovereign. We would like to talk to you as a nation.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, Brexit, in a sense, was an act of self-determination. In a sense, it was a people or a country deciding to break away from a larger structure so that they could self-determine. And referendums kind of, represent this idea of plebiscite of people deciding what they want to do with their lives.
What I'm doing is on an individual level.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can keep decentralizing. That
and I think the whole world should go in that direction.
Yeah.
The bigger the conglomeration, the bigger the tyrant you will get as a leader.
100%. I think that is. We talk about problems a lot, don't we? What are the solutions? Well, the solutions is decentralization. Okay, well, how do we decentralize? We do it as a country, as a group, as a county, as a borough, and then ultimately as an individual. And then build from the ground up as a group of individuals rather than.
Shetland is not going to become independent overnight. It'll be a gradual process as people join the sovereign nation of Shetland as inhabitants of Shetland. They will bring their land with them. They will relinquish any ties with the, if you like, the parent state until we suck it dry. We are the de facto, de jure, really, authority. We are the ones with the real authority in Shetland.
Because that was during my active phase where I was testing all these things in the system. I understood that, I can have a Allodial title over me and my body. Yeah. Which is what they make claim over, isn't it? No,
you see, they don't. Sorry. They don't. When you go into court and you stand in the dock, in Scotland, they will ask you, in Scots law, they will ask you, in my case, are you Stuart Allen Hill? they're not asking if that is my name. They're asking is, are you this entity that we own?
Yeah, it's a little bit like a limited company, isn't it?
Yeah. What they're 90% of people will answer yes to that question. Am I Stuart Hill? If I ask that question in the street, obviously I'll say yes.
Mhm.
But the court is not the street.
Mm.
So when they're asking that question, they're asking it for a specific purpose. It's a trick question. And as soon as you say yes, you have lost. You've lost jurisdiction. You've lost all your authority. You've given it to them. They have got it by your consent. Everything is done by consent.
Yep.
You don't have to give your consent.
I think what I meant is, I 100% agree with you on that, and I've proved that to myself many times. But in terms of the way England is run, right, is that the sovereign or the monarch makes a coronation oath, right, in which she makes an oath to protect the people, right? And the deal is we transfer our sovereignty to the monarch collects the sovereignty of the nation only on condition that all of our sovereign rights are protected by the sovereign.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, that's personal sovereignty, which is different than territorial sovereignty. Yeah. Or maybe they're the same thing.
No, they're not the same thing.
Okay. So this is personal sovereignty. But if the monarch, the sovereign who, fails in their duty of their coronation oath, then we have the right to, take our sovereignty back. How is that the same? Sorry, how is it different? How is territorial sovereignty different than personal sovereignty?
Well, territorial sovereignty is to do with the land.
Mm-hmm.
So they're deemed to own the land, the crown.
Mm-hmm.
And because each one of us has these two personalities, the living man and the straw man, the legal fiction,
Mm-hmm.
that's the one they own.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one they trick us into saying we are. So as soon as we say yes in answer to that question in the court, we are giving them our consent to be that object that they own.
But in territorial sovereignty, the crown, the queen, claims that they have Allodial, right?
Yeah.
And that because they hold it in Allodium, they give us a title, they grant us a title to the property in which they determine what rights we have on that land.
That puts everybody in the same position as the lairds in Shetland. They were given a piece of paper by a king.
It's a bogus claim, isn't it?
Who didn't have it to give.
Yeah.
So all the lairds with their landed estates in Shetland are all sitting on really dodgy titles, ultimately. And the same applies in England. I've accepted the Queen's oath on condition that she shows how she has Allodial title, pointing out that Oliver Cromwell took it in 1640 something.
So if Cromwell took it,
she cannot show that she's still got it. We have never had a legitimate monarch since Charles I.
So if Cromwell took it and distributed the Allodial title back to the people, then all we have to do is claim it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there a process that we can do that?
It's a simple letter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a claim.
And then, so if we claim the Allodial title, then
well, actually, it's a three-stage. You make the claim.
Yeah.
When it's not rebutted, you issue a notice of fault, opportunity to cure. When they don't do that, then you issue a notice of default, and that's the end of the process. That's yours then.
So theoretically, once you completed that
it's
process,
not theory.
No. So theoretically, in theory, if you did that, you can then issue your own passport, your own driving licenses, because that becomes a sovereign. That patch of land becomes a sovereign state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't actually got my passport on me at the moment, but I've got my
because that's you showed me yesterday. Well, I'll take a screenshot of it.
Yeah.
You've got
I haven't got that one either.
You've got a passport for Forvik, and you've got a driving license for Forvik.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's once it's a sovereign state, you've got the ability to issue your own sovereign documents.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So how do we do it then? I think the problem we've got is, we can make these claims. And what I found is that I've made them claims myself before, but when it came down to it, they will just ride roughshod over you with the enforcement arm, which is the court and the police.
Yeah.
So there's one thing that's saying it, but
Yeah.
there's another thing. I think Allodial title is that it's yours if you can defend it. But if you can't defend it, the law of conquest stands and they just take it off you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone else will take it by conquest. Yeah.
By conquest. So,
Yeah.
so we're always faced with that problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that they've got the guns.
Yeah.
They've got the military.
Yeah.
So how would we, in practicality, how would we be able to circumnavigate the ability to use tyranny to steal the land and try to oppress us as individual people?
Well, I've started to do it on the personal jurisdiction, personal sovereignty. I put a notice in the local paper saying I claim the allodial title to the letters, these are from memory, AAAHILLRSTTU, when written as Stuart Hill. Forget that. You can take a screenshot of the actual notice. That went in 3 times in the local paper. I advised the police and the courts of the fact that it was there, so they've got no excuse. And at the end of that, I finalised the claim by saying this is now my property. That legal fiction, I was calling.
You're claiming the straw man.
Yeah.
Yes. So for people that don't understand the straw man, right, it's quite an archaic and esoteric subject, isn't it? Do you want to give us a little bit of elaboration on straw man?
As I think I said earlier, we all have these 2 personalities: the living person, the living man or woman.
Yeah.
Correct myself there.
Mm.
And this legal fiction, the straw man,
a little bit like a limited company, isn't it? A little bit.
It is, and it's the means by which we interact with the state.
Mm.
It's on the driving license, any license from the state. It's on your bank statements. Any official documents will carry your name in capital letters, and that tells you that that is not you. That is the person which they claim ownership, or everybody assumes they have ownership.
It's a title to property.
Yeah. What I was doing was calling their bluff, knowing that if I claimed it, they couldn't dispute my claim without exposing the scam.
Mm.
Now, the general advice from all the freemen and that group of people is, you don't do that. You don't claim your straw man. You want to get rid of it. It's the state's property. You don't want anything to do with it. But I do. I get my pension from that. So
it's got a lot of uses.
It's quite useful. There might be a large fund behind it. I want that if I can get it. I found bank accounts.
I did the same because I did a lot of testing with the whole free man on the land stuff and the straw man. And yeah, in the end, that's kind of what I did, is I accepted that it's there. And okay, well, how can I use it to my benefit?
Yeah.
And I have done, many times over the years, rather than trying to get rid of it.
Exactly.
How would you interact in the public realm without a straw man of some kind? Because the living, breathing man can't interact with fiction, tell it.
Yeah.
It needs some vehicle, it needs some entity to be able to engage in
talking
commerce.
about vehicles, I was caught for speeding in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Now, this is outside Shetland. This is in Scotland. So this is of general interest. I got a speeding ticket.
What was you driving? Normal
car.
UK
I was just going.
car.
I was just going along with the rest of the traffic.
Yeah.
And on that section of road, they got last year 11,000 tickets at £100 a ticket. So it's a nice learner for them. So I'd just done my claim of allodial ownership of the straw man.
Okay.
So I thought, that was a coincidence, if you believe in such things. It was an immediate opportunity to test it. So, in effect, what I said to the prosecutor, they call them procurator fiscal up here, there are 2 entities with the same sounding name. There's the living man and there's the legal fiction. You are after the legal fiction. The legal fiction cannot drive a car. There is no prosecution here. End of story.
End of story.
And they dropped the case.
But what's interesting, actually, just an idea has just come to me then, because you're talking about claiming the straw man.
Yeah.
If what you're saying is correct and sovereignty was reclaimed for the people by Cromwell, right, then only he who holds allodial title can create other titles for people to use.
Yeah.
So if you're on my land and I've got allodial title, I can give you a license to do things on my land while you're on there. Yeah. If sovereignty is returned to the people but it hasn't been declared, then that means that the straw man has been created by the Commonwealth, not by the sovereign. Yeah, and therefore you can claim it as your property because you have a legal title over it.
Yeah.
So it's not their property. It's our property.
Absolutely.
Because it's been created under the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Allodial title that is held, in trust for
all
the people.
All it needs is for somebody to ask the question, which I've done.
Yeah. Well, they don't like answering that. No, didn't do they?
They don't like it.
It's like, Bank of England. We're told that the Bank of England was nationalised in 1945, right?
Yeah.
But the directors are private. I mean, why is that the case?
Yeah.
And then we're told that the Bank of England is nationalised, but yet we pay interest on money that they create for us.
Yeah.
Well, where does that go?
Yeah.
These are basic fundamental questions that they just go, total silence.
Yeah. The national debt. Who do we owe it to?
Who do we owe it to? Who created it?
Yeah.
If not us, the creditors, the allodial title holders, if you like, of the land. Yeah. So what's your next move? What are you doing now? Where are you up to with this whole struggle?
Well, it used to be a struggle in the courts while I was relying on the historical argument. It's very difficult to sustain a historical argument in the courts until I discovered the legal argument, which is absolutely simple. And it says, the authority of the court derives from the sovereign power. Yeah. The sovereign power is exactly the same as ownership of the allodial title. I own the allodial title. I am sovereign.
In Shetland.
You could apply that argument anywhere.
Yeah.
If they cannot provide evidence that they have the allodial title.
So have you brought this argument into the court?
Yes.
Yeah. What's been their response?
But well, I put it in a written document, a statement of truth.
Yeah.
And
as an application into the court?
Yes.
But you've not done it as a hearing, asked the judge direct?
No, because I didn't. I'm a little bit. I do things.
The wrong way around.
I just follow my nose and do what I think is sensible. I'm not following any preconceived somebody else's idea of how it all works. I'm finding out for myself. So when one sheriff said to me, it doesn't matter what you put in the documents on file until you actually speak it in the court. It doesn't count. Now, he let that out. I don't know whether he intended to or not. But so when I put that written document with the legal argument into the court and I started to speak it, the judge said to me, I'm going to stop you there, Mr. Hill. And foolishly, I stopped. If I just carried on, that would have been on the record.
Yeah.
So it's never come out actually in the record, but the big endeavour for me at the moment is to stop the Viking Energy wind farm in Shetland. I think it's the largest onshore wind farm in Europe, and it's completely out of context in Shetland. It's absolutely ruining the whole of the environment of Shetland in the name of money. Now,
so this is a Scandinavian project, is it?
No, it's SSE.
Okay.
It's our own energy companies.
Yeah.
And they simply want to rape. It's like rape and pillage in the old Viking times. It's still there, and it's happening to Shetland. And everybody thinks it's a done deal. Permission has been granted. They've made roads through the hills. They've put up turbine bases. They've done it. I think 2024, it's due to go live. Everybody thinks it's a done deal. So what I've done
It's
is,
completely inefficient as well, wind farms.
it's a total
scam,
nonsense,
isn't it? Yeah.
absolute nonsense. It's a subsidy farm,
Yeah.
nothing more.
Mhm.
And another big thing is that the BPAs, the chemicals that come off the epoxy resin blades, are so toxic that I think it's 1 milligram will pollute 10 million liters of water. How can they measure that amount coming off? They say that 150 milligrams a
But this
so
is
anyway,
this is a classic example of why we need to reclaim our sovereignty.
Yeah.
Because if the people of Shetland were sovereign, it's unlikely that they would allow such a toxic,
absolutely
land destroying thing into their environment.
But you see, nobody thinks that there's a way of doing anything about it. What the sovereign nation of Shetland has done is to accept their offer of the various authorities, the Scottish government, the UK government, SSE, everybody involved, contractors and so on. We've accepted their part of the offer to do this project, as long as they can show how Shetland is part of Scotland. And
what's the Shetlanders think about this project? Is there a general discontent about it, or are they just all silent?
There's a general discontent. You know, the consultation process was completely a sham.
Yeah.
And they went ahead and they were going to do it anyway. So anyway, we have accepted their offer. And in Ofgem's case, I went to Ofgem first because they are the government department. They should know. They should be able to give the answers. And the organisation and their officers are charged with the responsibility of showing how they have the authority to be working in Shetland. If they don't, there's a list of charges of giving approval, making the roads, the bases, all that stuff. Each one has a separate price. And I issued an invoice and a statement to the CEO of Ofgem, and that was not replied to. So I issued a statutory demand. Now, they can't ignore that because if within...
Quite a powerful tool.
It's very powerful, and it's something you can issue yourself. Within 21 days, they must come to some arrangement with you to make a payment or whatever arrangement they come to. Otherwise, you can make them bankrupt. So this forced them to take me to the High Court to set aside this statutory demand.
The High Court.
Now, I've got two sayings by which I run my life. Whatever's happening right now is just perfect, and we act as a magnet for the thoughts in our head. Once you get your head around those two, you realize that you are actually in control. You are the driving seat, and whatever happens in your life is your responsibility.
Mindset, isn't it?
So they took me to the court, and the hearing was on a Wednesday. It was for 11:30 and to run for 15 minutes. Now, I don't have Wi-Fi at home. I had to go next door, so I took two laptops just to be on the safe side, set them up. I'll set the first one up, 11 o'clock, 11:25, it crashed. I'm thinking, well, I've got 5 minutes to set the other one up. This is a very slow laptop. Took 10 minutes to actually boot. And then another 10 minutes or so to go through all the emails that I'd had since I last used it before I got to the one with the link, which had the hearing on it. So I arrived at 11:47. All the time this process is going on, I'm thinking, whatever is happening right now is just perfect. It looked like a disaster. I'd lost by default if I didn't turn up. So they'd had their hearing, and in the subsequent document which came out recently, they call that part one. Part two, the judge first of all went through what he'd done in part one, and then said, would you like to have a restart, Mr. Hill? I thought, yes, please. So we had a restart. Now, in my understanding, a restart is we have a completely new hearing. We start from scratch, and the applicant puts their argument, the whole process goes on as it should do. But no, the judge questioned me. He constructed an argument.
Practicing law from the bench.
Yeah. And sorry, I really didn't want to go on to this particular. This is another podcast.
Okay.
When it's finished, I don't want to preempt it.
Okay, cool. So you found yourself in a situation where you're bringing the CEO of the energy company in the Shetlands to court, and the judge ended up, favouring them and interviewing you.
Yeah.
And this is an ongoing struggle against SSE and the wind farm in Shetland.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can pick that up in another podcast if you want. Yeah, because it's an ongoing story, that is.
It is, and I don't want to prejudice what's going on. It's really interesting. It's really amusing.
Sure.
And it's absolutely super exciting.
Yeah.
Because when everything falls into place, we will actually have a bigger budget than the Shetland Islands Council. We that's all we lack at the moment.
What's the next step for the sovereign nation of Shetland in order to take it from because I guess that what you need is Shetlanders on board for the project, and what do you think you need to do to get the ball rolling to get a number? Because once you've got one or two, then
it will snowball.
It will snowball.
And credibility is to do with what people see. So I'm intending to buy some premises from which we can distribute fuel and supermarket kind of thing.
You can sell fuel without tax as a sovereign nation.
So we can start to show the benefits of being
that's
part.
The way to do it, isn't it? But ultimately, people can have philosophy, they can have ideology.
All those things don't matter.
When it comes down to it, it's money in the pocket, isn't it? How does this benefit me and my life and my family and my future? And I don't even mean that selfish.
No.
Right? It's like,
it's a natural thing.
Your own interests, aren't you? Because if you're going to take a risk, then what's the benefit to the risk?
Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like a really exciting project. How can I take advantage of the beautiful things that you do? Is Forvik still open to crazy people like myself?
Yeah, it is. The Forvik website, I have to admit, has been moribund for a number of years, but you can still join. You can go to forvik.co.uk/subscribe with a capital S. And you can find there, you can join the sovereign state of Forvik. You can join up for my sporadic newsletter. It tends to happen when something is happening.
Running a nation needs more than one mouth sometimes.
Really, yeah. And I could really do with properly setting up the Forvik website again properly.
It just sounds like it needs another wave of energy, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Okay. And so I think what could be really useful, at least for me and anyone else watching who thinks like me, is I'm, on a mission to reclaim my personal sovereignty, which I've largely done.
Yeah.
And territorial sovereignty, I think, is the next big one to try and challenge. Is that, it's great and useful if you had any processes to add to a site or to share with people, because, it all starts with challenging it, doesn't it? And just doing it and finding out what happens next. But things like, sorry to interrupt you, because things like utilities coming onto your land.
Yeah.
That's granted by an easement, right? So at land registry, the original title deeds will show an easement.
You be careful what you say when you say original.
Okay, well, please forgive my my clumsy use of land law language. But ultimately, the person who owns the land, the legal title, grants the utility companies the right to come on the land, which is called an easement.
Yeah,
an old land term, sounds like my name. So there's already indications of the power that the person who has the land has, because if I'm granting, then I'm in control of the situation. I know there was people, what they were doing is that the energy companies who come on as a result of the easement, right? So if they then bill you, right, because you're the grantor, you then bill them. for the easement, which is the same amount as they bill you, and it cancels out. But I think there's a lot of tools and a lot of power and a lot of things that we can discover about our freedom and our sovereignty related to territorial sovereignty.
Allodial title.
Get
that into your head. Allodial title. It is so important, and it's so
very difficult to research allodial title. There's not much information on the internet, and I have to go really, really deep.
Buy my book.
Perfect, David. So tell us a little bit about your books, Stu. We haven't touched upon that.
Right. This is called Stolen Isles. It's and you can see on the back here, not a penny of the money we get goes to the British government.
That's what I like to say.
You can only get it through stolenisles.com. It's all one word.
Stolen Isles.
Stolen Isles.
Is this your website?
Yeah. Well, it's a website for the book.
For the book. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a preview in there. I think the first, or the relevant chapter, which gives the whole story. But this is written for the layman and for academics.
So this is basically your war against the crown, is it? And this is what you've discovered.
Yeah.
And all the ideas about Allodial are all in here.
Yeah. It's really the history of Shetland from 1469 up to date, and all of the, but written from a legal perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And what I didn't realize when I was writing it, which was that I was writing about allodial title.
Amazing.
So it's
so now that
all
we know
of that has gradually crystallized into that very tight legal argument now.
Okay. Okay, Stuart, it's been fascinating. It's great that you're on this journey, and I'm kind of on this same journey myself, is trying to understand sovereignty, trying to exercise and live it on a daily basis.
But listen, what you have to understand is that when you make that allodial claim, you are making a new nation. It's as fundamental as that. It's not any kind of paper exercise. It's a real claim, and all it needs is the assertion of that claim to keep it live and make it real. That document,
this one here,
yeah, that is what I've never had the need to use it yet. But having claimed my straw man, this is the claim. To whom it may concern, the legal fiction known as Stuart Hill is the property of the living man, Stuart of Ocracoy, Shetland. Any attempt to procure agreement from Stuart that he owns this said legal fiction makes the perpetrator liable to a fee of £50,000 per event. Any other use of said legal fiction without express written permission from Shetland makes the perpetrator liable to a fee of £10,000 per event. And that's backed up by a letter to the police chief.
So what's this bundle?
So forget what's...
Don't please read it all.
No. I forget what's... that's the...
This is your bundle of claiming your straw man.
This is the bundle by which the local court admits that it is running false courts and fraud on the people of Shetland. They admit that. And so if I ever have to go to court again, that is what I can take with me.
So when we claim...
So when the police come, that's what they're given.
Yeah.
They need to show that they have the authority. Otherwise, they're putting themselves under a personal liability.
Well, that's interesting, that, because I got arrested by the police a few times. So there's one time in which I sued the police. And normally when you're making a claim, it's he who makes a claim has to prove the claim. But when you're suing the police, it's reversed. They have to prove they had the authority to do the things that...
That's exactly what I'm doing on a completely wide scale. Show me the proof.
Show me the proof.
All you've got to do, show me a document.
That's all I ever do. When I used to have arguments online or debates, I'd just go, show me the evidence.
Yeah.
And their reaction would tell me whether there was any evidence or not. Because they either run away or scream or ignore you, But when when you get that reaction, pretty much that I'm either right here or I'm very close to being right,
The latest dialogue on the High Court case is the judge has gone on leave. We were having the conversation. The conversation started at 9:42. It ended at 10:46. He was replying in that time. At 10:46, I've gone on leave.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. I used to have some real fun in those courts.
Yeah,
because we talked about this earlier, didn't we? Is that every time that you touch the system, or you push the system, right? And all the different touch points that you can, with interacting with the police or state agents or councils, or bailiffs, or courts, or judges. Every time that you put up some form of challenge or ask the basic question under what authority, right, is that the insight and the wisdom that you can gain from those experiences are totally invaluable and quite rare, because most people just comply. They go along with it. They just want to be in and out of there as quick as they can. So you're like me in that sense.
I want to be in there. I want to be finding out.
Yeah.
And it's completely to do with the mindset. I'm not a religious man, but the most valuable words in the Bible to me are Ephesians 4:6. Look it up. It says, one God, Father of all, above all, through all, and in you all. So that means you're standing in the court, you're talking to a number of other people who are all on the same level. And you can say, Namaste, I honor the God in you. As soon as they step down into their roles, the judge, prosecutor, and so on, they are stepping down. The man can step into the role, but the role can never be given life
but the role
to become
is a
the man.
isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the role is always subservient to the man. So I'm the only man left. I have to be the superior figure. I make the rules. I make the law.
See, I think that's what I prefer. So, talk a little bit about on this podcast about the different political structures that govern us. I'm not a fan of democracy. Democracy feels like mob rule. 51% can take away the rights of the 49%. Definitely not into hereditary monarchy. No. But I do like the idea of an elected monarch. Right? It's the old system. I haven't really explored it, but there's something about it that I feel that does there need to be an arbiter? Even though everyone's still got their own personal sovereignty, do we need to have somebody who settles disputes amongst us? Because if me and you can't settle a dispute, how do we do it? Do we have to have a third party that we delegate authority to, that we grant the jurisdiction to in order to settle the dispute? What are your thoughts on that?
Omnarchy.
Omnarchy. All monarchs.
We're all monarchs.
Yeah. No, I accept that. We're all sovereign. But ultimately, how do we settle disputes?
The law is expressed in 7 words. Do no harm and honor your contracts. That's all you need.
But don't we still need a third party to determine whether I have honored my contract or not? Don't we need somebody that we've both agreed, okay, that he can be the arbiter?
Well, do we?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
If you take that law,
if you've stolen from me, right?
I can't.
Yeah.
As a sovereign, I'm violating my own sovereignty.
Good point. So if you're acting in sovereignty, then you would be following the law anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So okay, that's a really interesting idea, actually.
All of those sovereigns can combine to in a common endeavor to do whatever they want to do. They can combine with
Anarchy. I haven't heard that one before. That's
I made it up.
Well, it's like anarchy, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's what anarchy is, isn't it?
Yes, but anarchy has all the wrong connotations now. It's been all connected.
I'm talking about classical anarchy, right? Not this new modern left-wing form, the Antifa and stuff. But it's anarchy.
It's nothing to do with chaos. It's just to do with the absence of
coercion.
No, the absence of a monarch.
Yeah,
and it's anarchy.
Yeah. So everyone is all on a flat level. Everybody is equal in that sense.
Yes, but it's down here.
Yeah.
Omnarchy is up here.
All right. Okay.
We're all sovereign.
Yes.
At that level, we all have that divine spark.
Interesting.
We all are part of God.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's the final note to end on. We all are part of God. Stuart, have you got any final words that you might want to share with our audience? I think, that idea about making a claim for territorial sovereignty, he said, but you've got to understand it's a nation. Maybe that's something that you'd like to finish on? Or you can choose.
What I would like to say is that I've done a lot of work on making these various claims. And this idea of the acceptance of an offer is totally different to the old adherence contracts that you used to, people would say, well, you can make a statement and if it's not rebutted, then it becomes law. they're absolutely useless. But to accept an offer, you have to identify what the offer is. Then you can accept it. The offer has come from the other side. It's not something you're imposing. You're accepting their offer under your conditions. Then you can make the conditions. But what is the difficult thing is to, particularly if you're dealing with a number of people on the Viking energy thing, I've got, I think, 10 respondents, to be able to control all of the correspondence, the registered post and all that stuff. It has to be done on a database, and that's what I've done. And I can offer that service to other people who want to follow that path.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Your own register.
It's not a register. It's a way of carrying out the process.
Mm-hmm.
So people will go to the post office, get their registered number sticker things, tell me what they are. I'll allocate the numbers to the various letters. I write the letters and email them out with the number already on them. They put the sticker on and take it to the post office. Mm-hmm. So it's the only way I can think of to control that process, because it's just too difficult for somebody coming into it new to be able to take it on and say, oh, right, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to, I've got the process and I'm willing to offer it. Mm-hmm. That will grow, obviously, and it will have to be delegated, but it's a process that's there available.
So, Stuart, if people want to find you online, where's the best place for them to do so?
It's Stuart@forvik.com. That's Stuart at FORVIK, no C.com.
So that's just the email. Do you have any websites? This one for the book?
Yeah, the book is on stoleneyes.com.
Stoleneyes.com.
The most up-to-date website is sovereignshetland.com. That's got a good account of all of my various
exploits,
adventures. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant that this all began with being shipwrecked on Shetland, and now they can't get rid of it. Now you're the king of Shetland.
Yeah, some would say a king nuisance.
Awesome. Stuart, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thanks for
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, no, grateful, brother. Thanks a lot, mate. Cheers.